animal law, recognizing some of our other members in the room, specifically Lori Barrett, our chair, and also subcommittee members who have worked on this. Lisa and Ruth are both here in the audience. Just wave hello. Thanks. We have a wonderful panel this evening that will give you all a wide range of information that's all about empowering you. Most of the time, our programs, our public programs, which we offer several throughout the year for free to the public, are focused specifically on laws and have a nice mix appealing to lawyers and non-lawyers. This one specifically tonight is really going to address what, as citizens, you can do to be a stronger voice for the animals, both on the federal, the state, and the city levels. So without further ado, especially because we got off to a little bit of a late start, let me just introduce our panelists, and then I'll give you an idea about how we'll proceed. All the way on our end, our first speaker will be Brian Shapiro. Brian Shapiro is the Humane Society of the United States of New York State Director. He travels the state to support animal welfare legislation, fight animal cruelty in all forms, and engage citizens to promote the protection of animals. As a former county legislator, he served as chair for both the Ulster County Environmental Committee and County Board of Ethics. During his tenure as executive director of the Ulster County SPCA, he bolstered a highly successful humane law division, increased adoptions, and expanded the shelter spay-neuter program. Brian also is a board member of the New York State Animal Protection Federation. Our second speaker will be Julie E. Lewin. She is president of NIFAA, National Institute for Animal Advocacy, and authored the how-to manual, Get Political for Animals and Win the Laws They Need: How and Why to Launch a Voting Block for Animals in Your Town, City, County, or State, and the simple steps it takes to do it. A few copies of that book will be available, just so you know, and then if you are so inspired and we run out of copies, you can always get it online. Julie lobbied for animals at the Connecticut legislature, was a political organizer and journalist. Now she trains advocates politically. Our third panelist, Allie Feldman, is the founder and executive director of a new political action organization for animals, Empire State Humane Voters. Prior to this, she led NICLAS's campaign to get carriage horses off New York City streets for over 5 years. Allie also has worked at the New York State Senate, for the Obama campaign, and for the New Jersey Department of the Public Advocate. In 2014, she was featured as one of New York Observer's Political Power 80, and more recently was named by City and State magazines as one of 40 under 40 political people to watch in 2016. At home, she's also the mom of 3 cats, Willow Waffles and Feline Dion. So without further ado, I just want to let you know what we're going to do is let each speaker talk, present their presentation to you. Then I will take 1 or 2 questions for that specific speaker that is directly related to what they have just presented. This ensures that each of the speakers will get their fair amount of time. After we've gone through all 3 speakers, we will open up the floor to general Q&A for all the speakers, and you're welcome to ask whatever questions you would like to them. Okay, so without further ado, first up, Mr. Brian Shapiro.
Thank you, everybody. Ready? Ready. My name is Brian Shapiro. I'm the New York State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. We're the nation's largest and most effective animal protection organization. What I'd like to do in this presentation, I'd like to thank the committee for having me back. I'd like to give sort of more of a broad overview of what we need to do to be a voice, an effective voice for animals, especially given a lot of the challenges that we're seeing at the federal and state level at this time. And hopefully to inspire you to be able to make, if you haven't already, sort of that step from activism to advocacy. And I do feel that there's a difference. A lot of times you can have activism, going to protests, holding signs, being a very loud voice. It's very important to maintain that. At the same time, Once your loud voice is effective and you're invited into the boardroom, you're invited to sit down at the table. What skills do you have then to be able to make a difference, to keep that momentum going? So I'd like us all to keep that in the back of our collective minds as we go forward, and at the end when I wrap up my presentation. Just a little bit about the Humane Society of the United States. We advocate for laws to protect animals. I am a lobbyist. I work often I live halfway between Albany and New York City. We conduct campaigns to reform industries. We've been very successful at that, particularly in relation to farm animals, providing animal rescue and emergency response, whether it's Hurricane Sandy here in New York State or Katrina, investigating cases of animal cruelty. We are the largest care provider for animals at our sanctuaries, and we are the nation's most important advocate for local humane societies. Next slide. Some of our recent victories that we've had over the past few years: dog fighting, Research Animal Retirement Act, helping lab animals, improving statewide pet dealer regulations at the state and local levels, banning shark fin, ivory, and rhino horn, banning the sale and possession of feral pigs, public contact with big cats, improving regulation with chronic wasting disease. There are, believe it or not, deer farmers, and this relates to deer farmers. That's almost like a cat breeder. You wonder why there are deer farmers in this day and age. A moratorium on live slaughter markets within 1,500 feet of a residence in New York City. Being able to change the mute swan management plan, which actually is not going forward at this point, and to pass local tethering laws. Next slide, please. Some of our national advances that we've seen: animal testing, farm animal protection. In Massachusetts, a ballot measure which passed, which said an animal must be able to stand up, turn around, and extend its limbs. That is not a radical concept. That's traditional animal husbandry. Modern factory farming is the radical, crazy concept. We've seen victories with SeaWorld and Ringling Brothers, cracking down on puppy mills, and we did see a victory, we're going to loop back to this, on Alaska's National Wildlife Refuge and protection for the refuge, which is in a lot of trouble right now. And I'm going to give everyone a homework assignment to work on in order to reach out to your state senators. This is a very important bill. This is an all-important piece of federal legislation that we're looking at right now. Next slide, please. Some of the New York State bills we've defeated, because this isn't just about passing good laws, it's about stopping bad laws. An ag-gag law in New York, which was defeated in late 2012, which would have cracked down on whistleblowers on farms. Many of you are familiar with ag-gag legislation. Trapping snapping turtles, which would include the clubbing and spearing of snapping turtles. Yes, your state legislators supported clubbing and spearing snapping turtles, and hunting mourning doves. Those bills were defeated. For many years in a row, we've defeated a bill that would legalize snare traps for the first time since the 1970s in New York State. That's another very important bill that the HSUS, with our allies, is on the front lines with. It's in the Senate right now, in the Senate Environmental Conservation Committee. We're going to keep it there, we're going to kill it there, and we're going to make sure that does not pass again. And my favorite, which we defeated last year, and which actually made an Associated Press article, the New York State Farm Bureau put forward a bill which would redefine dogs as a crop or a livestock product. And I know that many of you contacted Assembly Member Chairman McGee of the Assembly Ag Committee. And the reason that this was put forward was if an animal is a crop, then you don't have to take care of that animal under a state's cruelty statutes, under Article 26 of our Ag and Markets laws. Once that got Associated Press coverage, you know that that legislator withdrew it because the last thing that they wanted was for people to know about this. The funny thing is that the Farm Bureau said this measure was needed to protect farmers from an unknowing public. Well, the public now knows, and the bill was withdrawn. Next slide, please. We've had countless accomplishments for animals. Wild turkeys relocated from New York City to upstate. Hurricane Sandy response. We have our emergency placement partner shelters across the country helping one another with cases ranging from dog fighting to large seizures. Our New York Blood Center campaign, of course, and coordinating with law enforcement cracking down on dog fighting, and a number of upstate neglect cases that were responded to. And this is just in New York State. Next slide, please. So, where do we start? How are these things done? I want to preface by saying I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experiences, what brought me here, and anything that I'm discussing, anything that this guy in a suit right here is doing, you can do, And I would like to ask everyone to step up your game, because now is the most important time for animal protection. And if it means you have to wear a suit, wear a suit. If it means you have to go and sit down with a group of people that you'd rather not sit down with, go sit down with the group of people, because that's how we get things done. And that's what the animals expect from us. Next slide, please. That's a moped. That's actually the same moped that I owned many years ago, more years than I want to admit. And I had that exact same one, and if you notice, the carburetor's not covered, so everyone who had that moped still has scars on their ankles. The reason that I put that up, a long time ago, this is in the late 1970s in New Jersey, my mother bought a moped and realized that she couldn't get a license for it because in the state of New Jersey, they'd never seen a moped before. So they said it's a motorcycle. So, you know, if someone had a moped, why do you have to take a motorcycle course and go through New Jersey motor vehicles that way? So as a kid, I helped my mother organize, and she started a group called the Moped Owners Association of America, long lost in the history books. But working as a kid and seeing my mother testify in Trenton, seeing my mother go to meetings, receive mail, organize mail from across the country, it planted a seed. And I learned at an early age how to organize and how to be involved, and that the fruits of your labor when you are involved with these types of things, you do see success. And this led to, in New Jersey, helmet laws for people riding mopeds, and actually having a specific test which is still used in New Jersey for moped riders. Next one. And that is a building, that's the post office in Woodstock, New York, constructed in a wetland and in a floodplain with zero environmental studies, with an illegal sewer hookup. That thing was an awful, awful project. So this was about 1997. Some folks had approached me. I was the head of an anti-nuclear environmental organization in Woodstock at the time. And I said, hell, I'm going to sue the federal government. And we won. I don't know how we won. And we got an admission of guilt. We discovered that soil from an inactive hazardous waste site was used. We had full remediation of the property, which traditionally flooded. The flooding was worse with that building, and now there is no flooding on that property. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. I just had passion. I hooked up with a number of paralegals who had kind of a basic idea. They knew if you sued the federal government, you have to sue Janet Reno. A Northern District Court thought that I didn't know that. And they didn't address the case, and they got a serious finger wagging for that one. So we were off to a good start, and we did win that case. Next slide. The reason why I bring those up is I only had my passion and my experience of being involved with politics at a young age, and I was able eventually to hone these things. And after the post office, ran for office, became a member of the Democratic Committee. Got on the town board, became a county legislator, got a TV show, and all of these things I used to be able to leverage these ideas of environmental protection, social justice, animal protection, and I am blessed. Here I am now, the state director for the nation's largest animal protection organization. And again, I mention this because every single person in this room is capable of accomplishing these things if you follow certain steps. There's different types of advocacy. There's personal, which is the roots of the so-called animal rights movement. In the early 1980s, you get some people together, you pop in some PETA videotapes, and you talk about these things, you do some leafleting. Personal and peer-to-peer, which it's funny how it's kind of gone back to that with grassroots organizing now. There's protesting and boycotting, community education, and most importantly, legislative work. Get to know the politics in your town, in your city, and get to know how things work in your state legislature. And a lot of people are getting wise to this. People used to not enjoy politics. I can't stand politics. Now, the door is shut. Who says I can't stand politics now? Politics are hot. Everybody knows that. Everything, even the air we breathe, is affected by politics and decisions made by officials. Next slide, please. Thank you. That's a funny one. Some of the things we can do to engage our elected officials: please don't be a Facebook warrior. Facebook is just one of the tools, or Slacktivist. Facebook is just one of the tools that we have. If you are just going to like things all day long, and I mean no offense, or if we are going to simply think that I signed that petition, or shared, that's another one, shared. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. Just make a call to that elected official, because when you make that call, your elected official knows that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other people just like you who would be calling, who feel that passionate. And then the next step, put on the suit or the fancy outfit and go and visit your elected official and sit down at that table and present your case as to why animal protection is important to you, it's important to your family, it's important to everyone at work that you know. And you expect this elected official to step up and to recognize this is an important issue and it's popular with your constituency. That's essentially the script. And of course, you add the details of whatever legislation you're lobbying. You don't have to be an expert in this. When the plumbers union, and my cousin is a plumber, he's a member, and he does a lot of lobbying on behalf of his organization. They don't know every single detail. They're just interested and passionate. That's all you have to be, interested and passionate. And if they need more information, you have your foot in the door, and then you say, I will get you more information. You build that connection with the individual. Call your legislator. Okay, one more. Thanks. We can hold that one. One more? Thanks. You can write thank you notes. If, like for instance, with that bill that was pulled, considering a dog a crop or a livestock, yes, I sent a thank you note to the individual who introduced it, but he pulled it. And if he knows that people are aware of this, he probably won't introduce it again. So write thank you notes or a no thank you note, as long as you are respectful. This is why I disagree with your position. And my entire family and everyone at work and everybody I know disagrees with your position because it does not benefit animals, and here is why. Schedule a district meeting in the district office. Don't be afraid to do it. You might be intimidated. You might just get to speak to a staff member, but a staff member is the one who tells the representative what's going on. So make that connection with a staff member at the offices. Attend a town hall meeting, very important nowadays. Volunteer with the campaign. Again, write letters to the editor, to newspapers. Letters to the editor are great, especially now. You can share them online and keep it going. A plan to attend Humane Lobby Day. The Humane Society of the United States has a lobby day. The ASPCA has a lobby day as well in Albany. And it's important for us to show unity and to attend these events and speak to our elected officials. I'll talk more about that later. Volunteer with local shelters and take action when you get these alerts. Next slide, please. So I put this up because if we don't, anyone who does not get involved in the political process for animals at this point, you are going to get left behind. You're going to get left behind, and the issues that you care so passionately about are not going to go to the forefront. So I also like this picture because this guy's running real fast. His outfit is great. His hair is unmessed up. He's throwing up gang signs, and he's still catching that bus. Next one, please. I'd like to talk about some local legislation, state legislation, and federal legislation. There's a bill, Intro 1233, which would ban animals in circuses and in performing acts. And this is an important bill this is a picture of a hearing that was held. If you look closely, you can see the back of my head and my friend Joyce here, and probably a bunch of other people here. Joyce, this is Joyce Friedman, who's our Senior State Director. Do you want to come up? And she's also formerly our New York City coordinator, just to talk for about 60 seconds about this important piece of legislation.
Absolutely. And I just want to start by saying that several years ago, I attended a workshop that Julie Lewin, who's going to speak next, did on taking political action for animals, and that motivated me to see that one of the most important, if not the most important way for us to protect animals is to do political action. So Intro 1233, many of you of course know about it, many of you attended that great hearing. This is a bill that has a real great chance of passing. We have 2 dedicated sponsors and a mayor who supports it. However, it will not pass if everyone in this room and every activist in New York City and really more members of the public get involved and work to pass this bill. So this bill would set a huge precedent nationwide and inspire activists all over the country to do the same. When Ringling Brothers decided to close down, which most of you know about, that has only helped the chances of this bill passing because our biggest opponent is no longer in the picture. However, as you know, other circuses with animals, particularly Universal, comes here with wild animals, and any other new circus can. So it doesn't mean we don't want to get this bill passed because Ringling stopped, okay? So there are many things that you can do, which other speakers will be talking about, but one very important thing to do, and I'm going to give you a little homework assignment since 1233 is a bill I'm working very closely on with a coalition of other organizations, is to call your council member weekly. So if you can just write down, if you don't know this already, Bill 1233 to ban wild animals in circuses in New York City. Call your council member weekly and ask what their position is and when they are going to sign on, and let them know you want them to. You'll reach a staff member and you will let them know that. And if you don't know your council member, you go to this website. It's council.nyc.gov. That's it, council.nyc.gov, and find your council member. And then you want to set up a meeting in your district office, and everything you're doing, you want to get your whole network to do. Everyone you know to do the same thing. So I just want to let you know we're working on this bill. You'll get more updates about it, but you need to get involved to get it passed. Thanks.
Thank you, Joyce. Next slide, please. State bill, because I'm giving you examples of local bills, state bills, and federal bills. We have many state bills that we're going to be working on. This is one that, as I mentioned before, we defeated it, and that is the so-called relaxed snare trap, where an animal gets caught in a snare, struggles, loses consciousness, wakes up, struggles, loses consciousness, wakes up, and this cycle goes on for 28 to 48 hours. That's why they've been banned in New York State for 40 years. We want to keep it that way. There is no scientific or justifiable reason for bringing these snares back. They are like landmines. They're cheap, they're easy, you can drop them everywhere, and they're easy to forget. So this is going to be one of our priority bills on Humane Lobby Day. I mentioned before advances that we saw by getting important regulations passed by rules passed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on federal lands, refuges in Alaska. The new administration has turned around working with some congressmen and some senators to try to basically turn them around and institute, next slide please, some very, very serious regulations, which what these would do, it would allow chasing animals from helicopters, using snares for grizzly bears, some of the most egregious forms of trapping. The U.S. Senate Joint Resolution 18 will revoke the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service rule that would prohibit controversial and scientifically unjustified killing methods on over 76 million acres of federal land in Alaska. Please contact your senators. These are your federal senators, Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, today. Next slide, please. What this would do is use airplanes to scout grizzly bears for trophy hunters, lure grizzly bears with rotting meat so that way they can get a point-blank kill, killing wolves and coyote mothers and their pups in the den, killing hibernating black bears. I repeat, killing a hibernating bear, and trapping of grizzly bears and black bears with cruel steel-jawed leg hold traps and wire snares. This is a very important piece of legislation that we want to defeat. The Congress passed this. Now it is before the Senate, and this is our last chance to stop this. Because the way that this is set up, it will take an act of Congress to ever revisit this again. So once this is in place, this is it. And if you think they're going to stop here, they're not going to stop here. They're going to go to other refuges, the NRA and the Safari Club and other organizations of that ilk. They are absolutely determined to take advantage of the current political climate to get what they've wanted all along. Next slide, please. So, when you call your senator, as I said earlier, you don't have to be an expert. Please oppose Joint Resolution 18, which would revoke the Fish and Wildlife Rule protecting wildlife on Alaska National Wildlife Refuges from cruel hunting methods. If you want, you can take a picture of this, and I will give the numbers of the senators. So when you get an alert, or you run across some kind of a call to action or an action alert, don't just like it, don't just share it. Let this motivate you and pick up the phone and make a phone call. That's the only way this is going to change. And then the next step is to meet with your elected official and to call a meeting and to bring other people. And we're doing that right now. We have a number of meetings that are planned with Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, and these are their phone numbers. Next slide, please. Thank you. That's not difficult. And if everyone did this, if every animal advocate did this, we would be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Because we are not only right, we are in the majority when it comes to these issues, but we don't know how to maximize our abilities, and that's what I'm hoping we will do. Humane Lobby Day is May 31st, 2017 this year. That's last year we had almost 350 people a couple of years ago, and it just keeps, we have a greater and greater crowd each year. So we hope that you will join us on Humane Lobby Day. Next slide, please. We have a district leader program where I'd encourage everyone, I'm going to give my email address at the end. We have a number of district leaders who represent our congressional districts, and I would ask that you please get involved, and this is an opportunity to represent the Humane Society of the United States as a district leader and to get the ear of your elected officials. Next slide, please. There is a talk coming up March 9th at NYU, and Paul Shapiro, who's our Vice President of Policy for the Humane Society of the United States, no relationship, he's a great guy. The Trump administration, what's in store for animals? We talked a little bit in this presentation, and there are many more issues that we need to be aware of and to be vigilant about. Next slide, please. And that's going to be March 9th at NYU from 6:30 to 8:30, and there'll be a full panel discussion similar to this one. And that's me. So what I would ask, please take down my number, my email address if you'd like to contact me. I'd like to close. This is from our CEO and President, Wayne Pacelli, and this was his words today in his blog. Traveling home to their districts, members of Congress are hearing from riled up constituents like never before. And right on the heels of a tremendously contentious election on Capitol Hill, telephone lines are being overwhelmed repeatedly by the fresh concerns of Americans roused to action. In cities across the country, citizens are organizing, vowing to maintain vigilance on politics for a range of civic purposes. These are welcome developments. The Humane Society of the United States has long advocated citizen advocacy on behalf of animals, and we want to see even more of it now. Now is the best possible time to join with friends, family, and neighbors and make yourself heard. Animals cannot speak for themselves, but you can give voice to their interests, whether they are bears or horses or cows or puppies. Take it from me, the public has got the attention of the members of Congress. Whether that translates into wise action by Congress, well, that depends on you. Wayne Pacelli, CEO and President of the Humane Society of the United States, and I hope that this information will be found helpful in your efforts to protect animals and create a more humane society.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so as promised, I'd like to take one question now. If someone has a question for Brian that is directly related to the stuff he just presented, and we will come back and open up for general Q&A for all three panelists once all three of our speakers have had a chance to speak. But if someone would like to ask a question right now of Brian before we move on to Julie, anyone?
Thank you. Oh, yes.
What's involved with becoming a district leader?
Talk to me. That's what's involved. Talk to me, and essentially what it is, when there's a call to action on a particular issue, I might say I need help with attending a meeting. I might need help with reaching out to an elected official. It's essentially working with the state director to be able to accomplish all of the goals that I set out earlier. So it's being a volunteer for the Humane Society of the United States. As a state director, I feel like I've been given a great toolbox to be able to go create great things to help animals. So it's the same thing. If you're a district leader for the HSUS, and Joyce is our senior district leader here in New York State, we've got a great toolbox to be able to do good things to help animals. So I hope that answers your question. And I hope that you'll show an interest and talk to me and others about becoming a district leader for the HSUS. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so our next speaker is Julie Lewin, author and advocate with lots of great information. And without any further delay, I'm going to hand over this area to her.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay. And your mic is.
Fantastic, thank you.
5 minutes? Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. This is marvelous for me. I used to live in the city. And Sharon and all, thank you so much for having me. And Brian, that was marvelous. That was marvelous, really. Okay. All right, I'm going to sit down to do this, okay? Because I can see what I'm doing better. Okay, NIFAA, the National Institute for Animal Advocacy. Enter. Okay. Get political for animals and win the laws they need. I'm here to teach you why and how to launch a voting block for animals in your town, city, county, or state, and the simple steps it takes to do it. What's most important to lawmakers? To be reelected, right? So if being reelected is the most important thing to lawmakers, shouldn't our lobbying strategy be based on that fact? Here's a really painful, brutal example. Licensed hunters in my state of Connecticut are maybe 1% of the population. Yet, because they lobby through a long-standing political organization that reliably, routinely endorses political candidates, they drive wildlife law and policy in my state. They support the trappers, who are a tiny percentage point of 100%, of 1 point, and so support the trappers as well. A brutal example of this is some years ago when I was lobbying for animal charities, and a leg hold trap ban bill had been introduced. And a very respected lawmaker stood up. He not only voted against us, but he stood up and extolled the virtues of leg hold traps, knowing that the 99+% of his constituents